Hello, your friendly neighborhood host JT Wheatley, back again for another episode of the History of Comics podcast, this time with the life of Chester Gould, Dick Tracy, and the invention of the American crime comic. Dick Tracy has been in American pop culture for so long it's nearly impossible for anyone to not imagine a minute. From its creation in 1931, the crime fighter would go on to influence numerous imitators in comics and other media, arguably launching the crime comic genre and changing the medium forever. And all this is done by a simple boy from Pawnee, Oklahoma, Chester Gould, who took his real-life fears of crime and translated into one of the comics' greatest characters. And like many creators, Gould came from humble origins. Chester Gould's family immigrated from Iowa to Oklahoma as part of the 1893 land rush, in which 50,000 claimed stakes in the newly opened territory. Among them were Chester Gould's great-grandfather, Riley Wilbur Miller, and great-grandmother, Martha Ann Duncan Miller, who married in 1878 and left their home in New Market, Iowa, to stake their claim. With their 4 children, which included 14-year-old old Alice and Chester Gould's mother, they built their first cabin in 1894 on a 160-acre parcel, and the Gould family still owns part of the original claim, with the log cabin lasting up to the 1980s before succumbing to a fire. Chester Gould's parents, Alice Maud Miller and Gilbert Gould, married on February 20th, 1900. And Chester Walter Gould would be born on November 20th, 1900, followed by his siblings Ray and Helen. As a child, Chester Gould would get in trouble for being curious growing up in Pawnee, Oklahoma. One such incident was when he smoked dry grape leaves on his grandfather's farm, which not only got him in trouble, but made him pretty sick. Gould also loved to draw, and in 1906 he got a box of crayons from his dad, which he would later state was one of his favorite Christmas presents. His love of drawing would continue throughout his childhood, from drawing on the blackboards at school, which he quickly erased before his teachers showed up, or filling the margins of his papers and textbooks with sketches. Gould realized early on his family was poor and became a door-to-door salesman to help with the finances. With his extra income, Gould would buy a projector and then a fiddle, which he could play by ear. Gould discovered comic strips in the Pawnee Courier-Dispatch and especially loved the Chicago Tribune, which he said had the best, like the Katzenjammer Kids and Little Orphan Annie. By the age of 7, he wanted to be a cartoonist himself. He was inspired by Bud Fisher, who did Mud and Jeff for the Daily Oklahoman, where he made $50,000 a year in 1907. Soon, Chester Gould would do sketches for his school paper and later entered a contest when he was 14 for a movie trade magazine. His uncle Bob owned a movie theater house on the main street of Pawnee. He would win his first prize of $5 for his Drawing Power of Movies, which depicted a giant horseshoe magnet drawing people into his Uncle Bob's movie theater. Along with the prize money, Gould's cartoon got to be run in the trade magazine, and with his success, he decided to enter more contests. To save money for college, Chester Gould started to work at a local drugstore where he earned $15 a week. He would enter another drawing contest for the American Bay magazine, where he won $10 for his World War I drawing. Gould also started doing lettering for money and was contracted to letter the mayor of Pawnee, J.V. Orden's office for 75 cents, which he did with a blacking with a gold leaf. However, when Orden saw the lettering, he said he would only pay 50 cents for it instead of the agreed-upon 75. Gould then calmly took out his single-edged razor blade and just scratched the lettering off the door. Gould would later state that he was always proud of his work and would never tolerate being cheated. Other lettering work would come about along with sign painting. Chester Gould would later pay $20 for the W.L. Evans School of Cartooning and Caricaturing, which he would later state was his only formal training. It was through his course that he learned to use the Gillip dip pen, the only pen he would ever use, along with cross-hatching. At his regular school, Gould was known for making excellent grades, but he was disciplined for mischief. Of note, he was friends with Moses Yellowhorse, who would later become the first full-blooded American Indian to become a Major League ball player, playing 2 seasons with the Pittsburgh Pirates as a pitcher. In 1994, he was inducted into the American Indian Athletic Hall of Fame. Chester Gould would give him a shout-out in Dick Tracy in 1935 with a character named Chief Yellow Pony, who forms a posse with Dick Tracy and Pat Patton to track down the arson siblings and Cutie Diamond. However, Gould never heard back from Yellowhorse. Chester Gould's nickname growing up was Chess, which was short for chestnuts, and was very popular, serving as vice president of the student body during all 4 years of his high school. He would later do the class history of 1919 with his best friend Walt Clark, who was nicknamed Chunk. With professional and schoolwork, Chester Gould was becoming known for his artistic abilities, but it would be a strange twist of fate that finally took him outside of Pawnee, Oklahoma. It came about when an Oklahoman A&M Agriculture and Mechanical, later renamed Oklahoma State University, senior college student Frank Martin was conversing with some local kids in Pawnee about how A&M had just beat Oklahoma 9-0 in a football game. One of the high school kids, a sophomore, asked to borrow one of the game programs, and when he returned it, Martin noticed that the margins were sketches of 5 of the A&M college players along with a witty comment about each. As it happened, Martin was the vice president of the Education Society on campus, editor of the school paper The Redskins Yearbook, and a talent scout for the college. The high school sophomore, of course, was Chester Gould, and Martin was so impressed with his sketches he pinned them on the main campus bulletin board. This, in turn, got the attention of Miss Maud Cass, the managing editor of the Redskin Yearbook, who asked Chester Gould to come to Stillwater, which was a 30-mile trip from Pawnee, and spend the weekends on the campus working in the art department. With his parents' consent, Chester Gould enthusiastically accepted, though he would find out it was more work than he was anticipating, doing caricatures and cartoons throughout the yearbook, all while still attending high school. Despite this heavy workload, Gould gladly came back for his senior year of high school as well. Sure enough, when Gould graduated from high school in 1919, he attended Oklahoma A&M in Stillwater until 1921. As it turns out, the Gould family would move to Stillwater in full, thus allowing him to save money by staying off campus. Another opportunity came Charles Gould's way when Charles Page, the editor and owner of the Tulsa Democrat, had learned of Gould's talent and offered him a job as an editorial cartoonist at $35, mainly to campaign against a $5 million bond issue to create the Spanwell Reservoir for the city of Tulsa. Gould moved to Tulsa at the age of 19 to do so and ended up doing 18 editorial cartoons in a month criticizing the bond issue for the dam, which passed anyway. It will be another 12 years before another of Chester Gould's cartoons will appear in the Tulsa Democrat, but that will be Dick Tracy. Growing up, Chester Gould never had electricity or indoor plumbing before, so the move to Stillwater was a surprise, and considered the family's new 3-room bungalow quite luxurious. While in college, Gould tried to focus on his studies at first, but soon cartooning started to creep back in, even making him popular on campus despite being a freshman. Even after joining the local Lambda Chi Alpha fraternity, Gould found himself doing caricatures of all the other members. His chemistry professor, Ira Jones, encouraged Gould to focus on cartooning, and Gould would later send him a Dick Tracy drawing in 1932 as a thank you, and would later even ask Professor Ira Jones for advice on how to do lab work for the strip. In late March of 1921, Frank Martin, now a close friend of Chester Gould, encouraged him to meet Mr. Harrison, the editor of the Daily Oklahoman, which published in Oklahoma City. As it turns out, Harrison was already familiar with Gould's work, and the Daily Oklahoman paid him $30 for one of his cartoons, later offering him a job despite still being in college and 80 miles away, where Gould started to feature in the spotlight at $15 a week. These would later appear in 1957 when Chester Gould was featured in the show This Is Your Life, with Harrison a surprise guest who pulled that original $3 cartoon to Gould's surprise. Deciding he wanted a career as a cartoonist, Chester Gould wanted to move to Chicago in 1921, but his parents were worried since the city had a reputation of being gangster-ridden at the time. And let's be honest, not as much has changed since then. Looking for advice, Gould went to his friend Frank Martin, who then talked with his father, encouraging Chester Gould's move to Chicago, which his parents finally agreed to. On that, Chester Gould set off for the Windy City on August 30th, 1921, with $50 in his pocket, where he rented a room at $3 before moving on to the Northwest campus, where he planned to attend night school, and continuing his major in commerce and marketing on the Evanston campus. Now in Chicago, Gould started to submit his cartoons to every paper in town, only to be rejected time and again. His parents were still worried about him living in Chicago, with his dad writing at one point about how he keeps reading about how all the gangsters are killing people in the streets. Finally, the Chicago Journal offered him a position in the art department for $30 for 1 month. Gould was able to live cheap and committed to doing so, except for the one time he splurged on the radio for $12. To get a better signal, he bought some wire and insulation and rigged an antenna outside his apartment window. When his landlady told him to take it down due to being a building code violation, but Gould never did. And of course, this would also show a sign of his later love of gadgets, which of course would sneak their way into the Dick Tracy strip. Soon, Gould started classes at Northwestern and attended the Chicago Art School as well, while continuing to submit cartoons to papers like the Chicago Tribune and Herald Examiner. To make ends meet, he worked at Zuckerman's ad service. Finally, in 1922, Gould started to work at the Chicago Tribune, but in the Art Services Department. He wanted to come in as a cartoonist, but once he heard the salary of $50 a week, Gould couldn't say no. Chester Gould continued to submit cartoons, this time to the Hearst paper Every American, while studying its T.E. Powers cartoons. Finally, he spent $6 a week's worth of living expenses for his own cartoon at the paper and carefully cut its edges so it would fit perfectly over Powers' cartoons in the paper, and even went so far as to place it on the editor's desk. The gamble worked as the Evening American's editor, Mr. Curley, called him into his office. Originally fearing he was in trouble, Mr. Curley stated the best way to get rid of Gould was just to hire him, which he did, and he was given a $10 bonus. After a year of working at the Evening American, Chester Gould then signed a 5-year contract in the American's advertising art department, doing layouts and promotional ads, which included one humorous anecdote of having to draw a coffee cake fresh from the oven to advertise for a weekly bakery, stating that drawing coffee cake is less fun than eating it. Bill Jennings, Chester Gould's boss, was so impressed with his work that he would later invite him to join the Tavern Club, with Jennings as his sponsor. While Gould appreciated the offer, he told Jennings he would only take it up after he became a successful cartoonist. He would finally join the Tavern Club after 34 years. At the Chicago Tribune, Chester Gould created the Radio Cats, based on the cat's whiskers of a radio, and would naturally star cats around the radio and humorous adventures involving new invention. Less than a year into the strip, Gould would change the name to Radio Lanes, with the cats now becoming humans, though the tone was still the same. In 1928, Gould would create Fillion Fables, an adventure strip, at the request of his boss and fashioned after Ed Whelan's Minute Movies, a very popular strip at the time. Reportedly, this was done after Hearst was unable to lure Whelan to the Every American, so he decided to just imitate him instead. Gould said no one could imitate Whelan, but was told to do so anyway, with the series starring Jack Storm and Dolly Darling, a couple constantly escaping the traps of the evil George O. Silverruff. While popular, Chester Gould was never satisfied with Fillion Fables, as it viewed it as just copying someone else's work instead of being his own. Later, Gould did Lots of Things Happening, a feature which caricatured people and places in the news, and among those was an editorial cartoon depicting the weather as a beautiful lady holding a bag of wind, a sprinkling can, and a bag of slush, and a bag of sunshine. Below her, a little man holding fishing poles, golf clubs, and other sports items looks up and says, "Are you going to be a good girl this year, or ain't you?" Reportedly, Hearst himself loved this cartoon. Next, Chester Gould created the feature Why It's a Windy City, where he interviewed businessmen, along with a caricature of each one, and also did his daily sports column. Soon he was producing 11 pieces of art a day, working throughout the night twice a week, essentially providing a cartoon whenever the paper needed. Despite this hard work, Chester Gould would later comment to his daughter, "The Lord gave me a good body. I couldn't help myself. I finally hit the gold mine." With such a schedule, Chester Gould found himself eating candy bars over regular meals, though he managed to stay in shape with regular swims at the local YMCA, where he met Olympic swimmer Norman Ross. With professional life finally on track, his personal life was about to uptick as well. Since 1922, Chester Gould lived in Evanston with the Thurmston family, and in 1923 he graduated with a degree in commerce and marketing, during which time he attended the Lambda Chi Alpha functions. At 24, he had even purchased some property in Rail Wharf, and along with purchasing a Maxwell coupe from George Flory, who would have a hand in getting Gould to California in 1958's Ralph Edwards' This Is Your Life program. While Gould was working steadily, he continued to submit cartoons, this time to Captain Joseph Medill Patterson, who hired cartoonists for the Chicago Tribune and New York Daily News, but with no success. Despite this professional setback, Chester Gould's personal life was picking up when the Thurmston's daughter, June, arranged her to meet her friend Edna on October 3rd, 1925. It would be a fairly quick courtship as Gould proposed to Edna on June 29, 1926. His father-in-law even arranged a house for them on 17th Street in Wilmette, and encouraged Chester Gould to sell his Rail Wharf property to buy furniture for their home. Chester Gould and Edna were married on November 6, 1926, and on August 18th of 1927, their daughter Jean was born. Despite a new family to support, Chester Gould decided to leave Hearst Evening American, much of it due to having to create Philly and Fables, saying the strip just wasn't for him. When Gould heard that Hearst was looking to create a new strip imitating Little Annie